Hello, check.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Am I audible, Dr. Balaguru? A very pleasant good morning, one and all gathered in this cyberspace. We are about to begin the proceedings of National Webinar on Molecular Evolution, Taxonomy and Ecology. So we have all this gathering here. By respecting the people who have joined time as well as for saving the time, we are beginning the proceedings now. Before getting into the real proceedings, it's our duty to remember the creator. May I request Mr. Yasser, PhD scholar, Department of Botany, Jamal Mohamed College, to recite few verses from Holy Quran. Over to Mr. Yasser.
Assalamu alaikum. Auzubillahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Sadaqallahu liman hamid. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Yasser. And now we shall listen to Tamil Thai Valthu, which is customary in Tamil Nadu. Before beginning our proceedings, before getting into the real proceedings, it's our duty to remember the creator. May I request Mr. Yasser, PhD scholar, Department of Botany, Jamal Mohamed College, to recite few verses from Holy Quran. Over to Mr. Yasser.
Assalamu alaikum. Auzubillahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العظيم. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Yasser. And now we shall listen to Tamil Thai Valthu, which is customary in Tamil Nadu. Before beginning our proceedings, before getting into the real proceedings, it's our duty to remember the Creator. May I request Mr. Yasser, PhD scholar, Department of Botany, Jamal Mohamed College, to recite a few verses from Holy Quran. Over to Mr. Yasser.
Assalamu alaikum. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad Allahu samad lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Sadaqallahu al-azim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yasser. And now we shall listen to Tamil Thai Valthu, which is customary in Tamil Nadu. Before beginning our proceedings, before getting into the real proceedings, it's our duty to remember. Thank you very much, Dr. Balaguru, for playing Tamil Thai Valthu. Now it is time to welcome the gathering. May I request Dr. H. Syed Jahangir, Associate Professor, Department of Botany, who is the departmental coordinator for DBT Star College Scheme, to welcome the gathering and to introduce about the host institution as well as to introduce the speaker to the audience. Now it is over to Dr. H. Syed Jahangir.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Aslam. Aslam, I am audible? Assalamu alaikum and good morning to one and all gathered through the virtual platform for National Webinar on Molecular Evolution, Taxonomy and Ecology. On behalf of our management, principal, directors, head of the department, dean of sciences, faculty members, and my own behalf, a warm and cordial welcome to one and all gathered here, and a red carpet welcome to today's chief guest, Professor K. Praveen Karan, Professor and Chair, Center for Ecological Sciences, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce about our college as well as our department. About our college, Jamal Mohamed College was founded in 1951 by the two philanthropists Haji Jamal Mohamed Sahib and Janab N.M. Kajamian Rawattar. Both of them were freedom fighters. Haji Janab Jamal Mohamed Sahib represented the country in the second round table conferences in 1931 along with the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi ji, and presented a blank check for freedom movement. And benevolent founder Janab N.M. Kajamian Rawattar took part in the Salt Satyagraha movement along with Mahatma Gandhi ji at Vedarniyam, Tamil Nadu. Our college was awarded A grade status by NAC continuously for third time. UGC recognized Jamal as college with potential for excellence. Government of India accorded DST FIS scheme for 5 departments in the year 2019. In 2020, Department of Biotechnology awarded Star College Scheme for 5 departments. At present, the college offering 23 UG, 21 PG courses, 17 MPhil and 17 PhD program. Total number of students 12,027 students, both aided and self-financed. There are 467 teaching faculties and 255 non-teaching faculties. As far as the department profile is concerned, Department of Botany was established in 1967 with UG Botany, upgraded it to PG level in 1985, elevated as research department in 2002. The department successfully completed the UG sponsored innovative program PG Diploma in Biodiversity Informatics with a tune of 1 crore rupees. The department received project funds from SERB, DST, DPT, NIF DST, TNSCT, UGC with a tune of 30 lakhs rupees. The department recognized by DST FIS and DBT Star College Scheme program. Horticulture program started with the support of NSQ UGC. So far, 80 students have been awarded PhD degree. 150 research articles were published in peer-reviewed journal. Students securing ranks in Bharathasan University combined rank examination. Signed MOU with 2 universities. Successfully filed 1 patent. With this, I am happy to introduce today's chief guest, Professor K. Praveen Karan, Professor and Chair, Center for Ecological Sciences, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Sir did his BSc in Agriculture from University of Agricultural Science, Bangalore. PhD from State University, New York, dealt with phylogeny and biogeography of Asian leaf monkeys. Application of phylogenetic tools in understanding macroevolutionary process is first research area. Particularly interest in biogeography, character evolution, molecular systematic, and conservation genetics. With this, once again, hearty welcome to Professor K. Praveen Karan sir. May I request Professor K. Praveen Karan sir to deliver his lecture. Sir, please.
Thank you, one and all, for this wonderful opportunity to share my research with all of you. I hope I am audible. So let me share my screen and get started.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So how do I reduce this? Oh, that's better. Okay, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'll be talking about some of the work that has been going on in the lab for the last 15 years on geckos. And I got involved in this work because I was really intrigued by house geckos, these little lizards that you see inside the house. They're easy to find. And I was always intrigued, there are so many different species of house geckos, and as you go across India, there's a different species that shows up in other parts of the country. So I thought that would be a wonderful system to study, interesting questions in evolutionary biology. And basically, these geckos belong to the genus Hemidactylus. And once I started that work, I realized that there's a lot of other species of Hemidactylus in India. And then the study basically expanded further. Anyway, so the title of my talk is An Island Called India, Phylogenetic and Diversification Studies in the Endemic Hemidactylus geckos of India Reveals an Adaptive Radiation. So this work actually is a sort of a compilation of work done by two of my past PhD students, Aparna Lajmi and Rohini Bansal. And we also had an intern in the lab who helped out Aparna with some of the analysis as well as data collection. So let's start with the adaptive radiation. What is adaptive radiation? And then we'll come back to hemidactyls. Okay, so basically adaptive radiation can be defined as rapid diversification of species from a common ancestor accompanied by phenotypic divergence and specialization to exploit newly available resources. Right, so you have one ancestral species, it undergoes rapid diversification, giving rise to multiple species that are adapted to different ecological niches, if I may. And often these daughter species exhibit morphological divergence also, rapid morphological divergence. Not always. So this phenotypic divergence, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't quite see it. An example of adaptive radiation are the lemurs of Madagascar. Madagascar, as you know, is an island off the coast of the eastern coast of southern Africa. And there are about 70 different species of lemurs. And in recent past, some 10 species went extinct. By recent past, I mean, thousands of years ago. So we know that these lemurs existed there from the subfossils that people have found. And at one point in time, I was involved in a project to sequence these extinct lemurs and then place them on the phylogeny. So why is this an adaptive radiation? If you look at, now this is a simplified lemur phylogeny. If you look at this phylogeny, you have animals that are, as small as that, like the mouse lemur. They're really tiny. They're some of the smallest primates in the world. And you also have some species that went extinct, like some of the extinct ones like Paleopropithecus and Megaladapus are much larger. In fact, there was an extinct lemur that was gorilla-like, as big as a gorilla, pretty much terrestrial. So you have mouse lemurs that are arboreal. And then you have Paleopropithecus, which is an extinct lemur, which is more like a sloth from South America. Megaladapus was a leaf-eating lemur that was, so it's more like the koala in Australia. Then you have ground-dwelling lemurs, like the ringtail lemurs. You have lemurs that feed on bamboo shoots. And you have this bizarre-looking lemur called the ii. ii specializes in pulling out grubs from stem and trunk of trees. It has an extended one of the digits in the hand is extended with a really sharp nail at the end, and it would then stick in that finger to pull out grubs, right? What's interesting is Madagascar does not have any native woodpecker species that would have actually occupied that niche, right? So one of the primates has actually occupied that niche, right? So this is basically adaptive radiation, many different species, rapid bursts of diversification, and each of them adapted to very different ecological zone niches. Some are arboreal, some are terrestrial, some are diurnal, some are nocturnal, some are leaf eating, some are omnivore, some are exclusively fruit eating, and so on. So it's really a amazing array of different morphological forms adapted to specific niches, right? So adaptive radiation has always excited evolutionary biologists because it provides a wonderful setting to study a lot of things, diversification, speciation, morphological evolution, and you can also look at ecological questions. How does niche separation happen between species and so on. So the point is, then the question is, why do we see adaptive radiation in some groups while we don't see such radiations in other groups? So what are the conditions that promote adaptive radiation, right? One of the so one can look at it in as extrinsic factors and intrinsic factors. Extrinsic factors. Sorry, this should have been extrinsic and intrinsic should have been here. Okay, so this is intrinsic factors and this is extrinsic factors. Okay, so intrinsic factors are specific to the species. So if there is a key innovation that helps a particular lineage to exploit new resources, you can have adaptive radiation. Right. A classic example of that is the cichlid fishes in the Rift Valley lakes of Africa. In case of the cichlids, a new kind of jaw morphology helped them to exploit different kinds of resources, and they went berserk and underwent adaptive radiation. And in plants, the example of adaptive radiation comes from C4 synthesis, a new key innovation, resulting in radiation of grasses, right? But you can also have external factors or extrinsic factors that can promote adaptive radiation. And basically opening up of an ecological space. When does that happen? Well, if you go to any place on the planet, most of the niches are already occupied, right? There are already species there. But under certain situations, you will have a completely unoccupied, say, an island, particularly volcanic islands that emerge from under the ocean. Such islands, when they emerge, they have pretty much nothing on them, right? So the plants and microorganisms and then fungi and then plants begin to colonize them. And then you have animals coming in. And because these islands are isolated, not many species can make it. The ones that do make it, they have a whole range of niches, unoccupied niches that they can now occupy, right? And so you have an adaptive radiation. So the adaptive radiation was earlier seen largely in islands. So they were called island radiations, and there are many examples of adaptive radiation in the islands, and I'll come to that in a minute. Madagascar is a classic case. You can also have a situation, where there is climate change resulting in mass extinction, right? And the few lineages that survive then undergo radiation, right? So the KT mass extinction was a classic example of that. But in case of island radiation, that's where adaptive radiation was first noted. One of the celebrated examples of adaptive radiation in islands comes from the Darwin's finches, right? And Darwin says the most curious fact is the perfect gradation of the beaks in different species of Geospiza. That's the genus to which Darwin's finches belong to. From one as large as that of a half-inch to that of a chaffinch, and in the main, even to that of a warbler. So what Darwin is basically commenting here is that these finches have different beak sizes and shape, right? And in the mainland, you have something similar. So these are found in the Galapagos Islands, right? and the nearest mainland is South America. And he says that in the mainland, there is something like a warbler, small bird with pointy beak. And in the island also, you find one of those warbler-like birds. So you have a range of different beak size and shape. And then he goes on to say that seeing this gradation and diversity of structure in one small, intimately related group of birds. So he's saying that, all these species are related. They all cluster together. They are monophyletic. That's the term we use in phylogenetics for closely related group of species, right? Intimately related group of birds, one might really fancy that from an original paucity of birds in this archipelago. So he's saying that there were no birds there in the past. One species has been taken and modified to different ends. Right? So basically he's saying that there was one species that colonized the Galapagos, and there were all these open niches and they radiated. Right, so this is probably one of the earliest example of the adaptive radiation, and since then people have been seeing that adaptive radiations are actually quite common in volcanic islands. Hawaii is another example. There are many adaptive radiations in Hawaii, and I also showed you Madagascar. Okay, so. Now the other, so in case of the Darwin's finches, people have actually built phylogenetic trees and basically shown that they indeed cluster together, they are monophyletic, and that there was a single colonization from South America to the islands, right? And because there are many fishes, they had rapid diversification. Okay, so now the other reason for the other extrinsic factor, external factor for why we might see adaptive radiation is, if you have a sudden change in the climate, temperature and humidity, this can lead to a lot of extinctions. And this has happened a lot in the past. We know about the 5 major extinctions, and the most recent extinction was the Cretaceous Tertiary extinction. Now it's called the KPG extinction. In the past, it used to be called KP extinction. And basically, this happened because of that meteorite impact in the Caribbean region, and basically it was impact mediated cooling for a very long time. And that resulted in mass extinction, right? Anything larger than 25 kgs basically went extinct. So whatever remained then underwent diversification because there were many open niches. Okay, so that's about adaptive radiation, particularly common in islands, right? Now here's an example of post mass extinction. If you look at, I think someone's mic is on. Anyway, so here's an example of what happened post KT mass extinction in case of mammals. Okay, so this is the timeline here, 66 million years ago. That's when we had KT mass extinctions. Few lineages survived, and the ones that survived then underwent rapid radiation, right? And the mammalian radiation is also quite amazing. You have, again, diurnal mammals, nocturnal mammals, mammals that can fly, mammals that are in the ocean, a whole range. So that again is an adaptive radiation, but it's more of a continental scale adaptive radiation. Now, going back to the island radiation. Remember, islands tend to be insular, isolated, and often many unoccupied niches. So you have adaptive radiations in islands. Now, in the context of islands, India is really quite interesting. And I'm sure most of you know the geological history of the Indian plate. As you know, India was part of the Gondwana supercontinent about 200 million years ago, and about 170 million years ago, this supercontinent began to break apart. India, along with Madagascar, separated from Africa, and then India separated from Madagascar, and then basically traversed through the Indian Ocean and collided with Asia about 50 to 55 million years ago. And by about 35 million years ago, India had sutured, had merged with Asia, right? So basically for about 50 million years, from the time it broke apart from Madagascar till it sutured with Asia, for the 50 million years, India was an island. And then there is something else interesting that happened once India collided with Asia. You have the Himalayas that rose, right? So today, if you look at India, it is flanked by the Himalayas in the north and really high mountains in the east, which are sort of a continuation of the same mountain range. At least the same tectonic process gave rise to these mountain ranges in the northeast. But basically, if you look at this image, you make out that these high mountains are like a wall on the northern edges of India, right? And in the south, you have the ocean. So India today is like an island. It was an island for about 50 million years. Then it merged with Asia. At that point in time, there was some biotic interaction, and then the Himalayas rose and then became an island again. That's the way I look at it. In fact, I've written a paper on this. But anyway, so now climatically also India is sort of separated from much of Asia. Now this climatic separation is also mediated by the high mountain ranges, right? So to the northwest of India, you have the hot desert. To the north, you have the cold desert. So climatically also India is separated from Asia. In the northeast, of course, there's continuity with Southeast Asia, and in fact, many species dispersed into India through this corridor here. So the question then is, due to India's unique geological history, and it has been isolated from mainland Asia in the past, and currently geography and also climatic barrier appears to have maintained this isolation, right? Thus India is like an island to Asian mainland. So the question then is, does the origin, distribution, and diversification of Indian biota reflect this isolation, right? So are there any signatures of these isolations, right? So back to the Hemidactylus story. When we first built the phylogeny of Hemidactylus, at that point in time in India, about 23 species of Hemidactylus geckos had been recorded. We sequenced most of those species, plugged the species onto the global phylogeny. Hemidactylus, genus Hemidactylus has circumtropical distribution, so it is found in all the tropical areas, you know, South America, Africa, Madagascar, India, Southeast Asia. Basically what we found was that in India, there was an endemic radiation. So all the endemic species in India all branched together, right? They were monophyletic. And this radiation had about, by the time we were done with this work, this radiation had about 17 species, and the other Hemidactylus species that are found in India are part of some of these other clades, right? But there was a radiation in India, okay? And this is just like an island radiation, right? You have one species that makes it to an island, and there are many open niches, so it undergoes radiation. So this got us thinking, and when we looked at a number of other groups, we found that indeed you find radiations in other groups also, right? So I talked about hemidactylus radiation, the endemic radiation in India. Turns out another species of gecko, genus Geckoella, which is endemic to peninsular India, is also a radiation. There's one species in Sri Lanka. But anyway, Sri Lanka is part of the Indian plate. You see similar situation with skinks. So this part of the work was actually done by Rohini Bansal, the Geckoella work by Ishan, and Roy did the skink work. So we began to see endemic radiation in number of groups, and this was not a huge surprise by now, because, you know, if you, as I said, the geological history of India and its current sort of situation, it is like an island. So you see these endemic radiations in number of groups, right? In case of langurs, there's a radiation of 7 species, and this lineage dispersed into India around 8 to 10 million years ago. We have hemidactylus. When we started this work, it was about 17 species in the radiation, but now it's around 50. I'll come back to that in a bit. And this dispersal was about 35 to 40 million years ago. By then, India had already sutured with Asia. Geckoella radiation, the skink radiations. There's a ground-dwelling lizard called Cetana. We worked on that, and it turns out that there's a huge radiation there. Cetanas are again endemic to India. We see these radiations in tarantulas, in frogs, in freshwater snails, and in plants too. Many plant species we see endemic radiation in India. So clearly, for many of these species, India has been like an island, right? So then the question is, what about adaptive radiation? Do we see signature of, we see a signature of endemic radiation? Yes, these are all species endemic to India, and they're all clustering together. They are monophyletic, but is it an adaptive radiation? So going back to adaptive radiation, the definition, the more sort of recent definition is rapid accumulation of lineages through speciation accompanied by adaptation to diverse ecological niches, right? It might also have, you know, morphological or phenotypic diversification. It might exhibit phenotypic diversification, but it's usually adaptation to different ecological niches. And the other important point is rapid accumulation of lineages. So there are these 3 attributes that people use to identify adaptive radiation when compared to just a regular radiation, right? The group should be monophyletic, early burst in speciation. So that is rapid accumulation of lineages, and presence of ecomorphs. Now, what are ecomorphs? So basically, it's forms that are not related to each other, but are exploiting the same niche. Okay, so in an adaptive radiation, you in fact see repeated evolution of similar forms. Okay, so these are unrelated species that are exploiting similar niches and have similar adaptations, right? And often you have these different ecomorphs co-occurring. Okay, and this will become clear in a minute. Okay, so back to hemidactylus. So in hemidactylus, over the years, we began to realize that indeed there was a lot of interesting questions to be addressed. For example, the hemidactylus exhibits huge size disparity, right? This is the largest hemidactylus gecko within that radiation. By the way, hemidactylus is called hemidactylus because, you know, its feet has these divided lamellae. So hemi is half and dactylus is feet. So the largest hemidactylus, this I believe is Drunaticolus or Giganteus. Giganteus might be the largest, and that can be as big as that, you know, over a foot long. Went tail, tail tip to the tip of the nose. And the smallest one is one of these, which are like that big, right? A huge difference in size. And here are the ecomorphs that I was talking about, and forms, the repeated evolution of the similar forms. So there are some hemidactyls that are adapted to rocky areas. So they are rock dwelling or rupicolous. And Giganteus, Granaticolous, these are examples, maculators, these are examples of rock dwelling or rupicolous hemidactylus. There are some hemidactylus that are terrestrial. They are always found on the ground. Here's an example now, the species name escapes me. And there are some hemidactylus that are arboreal, they are found on trees, right? And the last ecomorph are human commensals. So these are the ones that you find inside the house. In Hindi, one would call it chipkali. And these are human commensals. As soon as you build a house, and within a year or two, you'll start finding geckos inside the house. And these are basically these human commensals. And these human commensals have been moved around a lot by humans. And are found in many parts of the world. Okay, so these are the four ecomorphs. Okay, and what's interesting is, so these ecomorphs have, I'll come back to the photograph in a bit. These ecomorphs have evolved multiple times. So repeated evolution of similar forms, right? So for example, rupicolous is distributed all through the tree. There are rupicolous or rock dwelling ones here, and they are all not clustering together. They are not related to each other, right? Similarly, ground dwelling is all over the place. Here, there's a clade, a monophyletic group of ground dwelling ecomorph, but you get the idea, they are all over the place. Human commensals, same story. There are many species, they are not clustering together, they are all over the place. Arboreal, again, you know, there's a few arboreal ones, right? So these are ecomorphs, right? And what is interesting is, if you go, say, outside Bangalore, to the countryside, you know, you have all these rocky outcrops, fields and villages and all that. In this small area, you can find up to 5 to 6 species of hemidactylus, right? In the rocky area here, you have, you know, the rupicolous species like Giganteus or maculators or Granaticolous, and you have a smaller rock-dwelling species called Tiruchirappalli. So you'll have 2 of those species here. In the agriculture fields on the ground, you often find Triaterus. These are pretty large hemidactylus. And in the scrub jungle, again on the ground, you have another terrestrial species. Again, the species name escapes me now. And in the village, you have the human commensal, and there are at least 4 species of human commensals in India, right? So the ones that you see around Bangalore are usually barbimaculators and frenators, right? And there's also Murray, and there's the one in North India, Flaviviridis, right? So in this small area, oh, and that's the tree dwelling one, right? Arboreal. So on all these big trees here, you'll find the arboreal, right? So these are the different ecomorphs I was talking about, and these forms have evolved multiple times in the phylogeny of Hemidactylus. So clearly, Hemidactylus is indeed, this radiation is an adaptive radiation, right? It's a monophyletic group. It has many ecomorphs, but early burst in speciation, that is something that needs to be tested, right? So that is not been tested yet. So at that point in time. So the rest of the talk, I'll talk about this early burst in speciation. So you have ecomorphs, repeated evolution of similar forms, and often these ecomorphs co-occur. So in a given area, you can have 6 to 7 species. Okay. Is hemitachless radiation and adaptive radiation? Well, except for this part of the requirement, the other two requirement it fits. Now, if it is an adaptive radiation, what could have possibly triggered it? So, right in the beginning of the talk, I mentioned, what are the contributing factors that result in adaptive radiation, right? The extrinsic factor and the intrinsic factors. So what could have possibly triggered it? But let's first look at rapid diversification. Okay, so the work so far that I've shown was done partly by Rohini Bansal, and we realized, okay, this looks like an adaptive radiation, but we need to sample more extensively, make sure we have captured all the diversity in this group, just the Indian radiation, the endemic radiation. So we did sampling across India. A large part of the sampling is actually in South India because this radiation is actually confined to South India. We took published data, the one from Rohini Bansal from my lab and others who had published, and then we sequenced a whole bunch of gene, nuclear and mitochondrial. We built time trees. These are dated phylogenies. I won't get into the details here, but basically you use fossil calibrations to calibrate the ages, or to determine the ages of the nodes, the internal nodes. Then you know when those speciation events occurred. Now, when you have species that are widely distributed, they often exhibit cryptic diversity. These are diversity. These are situations where you are actually dealing with multiple species, but morphologically they look quite similar, and one needs to then look at multiple lines of evidence to figure out how many species there are in that group, right? And this is this kind of work is termed integrative taxonomy, where you're using multiple lines of evidence. So the idea basically is that you sample a widely distributed species across its range, build phylogenies, and phylogeny retrieves multiple clades or monophyletic groups that are confined to certain geographic areas, right? That is an indication that maybe there are multiple species in this. So you started off by thinking it's probably just one species. When you build phylogenies, you retrieve these clusters that are confined to different parts of the country. So geographically, they are also clustered. So you're probably dealing with multiple species. One can also use species delimitation tools to figure out how many species there are in your data set, and that's something we did for our work. And once you have these clusters and you have run the species delimitation tools, these are the putative species, you can then look for other lines of evidence to further fortify your suspicion that there are multiple species, right? So you can go back, revisit morphology. Maybe this clade actually has certain characters that are unique to that cluster, and we had just missed it in the past. Or you can also do niche modeling to see if they are separated in ecological space or not, right? So you can use multiple lines of evidence to fortify your suspicion here that you are dealing with multiple species. Here's an example. In the hemitachless geckos, one of the commensal geckos, hemitachless bruci, has a wide distribution, right? It's found all over India, supposedly found all over India when we started this work, and also in Southeast Asia. And when we built the phylogeny, something very interesting emerged. So all of this is bruci, except for that. Okay, these are 4 species of ground-dwelling geckos that are nested within what we are morphologically calling bruci, right? Now the question is then, if these are 4 different species, then these clades probably should also be assigned to different species, right? So we looked at this more closely and actually realized that indeed there is subtle morphological differences that people had talked about in the past, and in fact people had given it different names, right? But these species had been subsumed back into brucei, right? So during our time, a new species was described, but all of these are old names that had been subsumed back into Hemidactylus brucei, and we resurrected these old names based on the molecular data and the morphological data. So basically, this one species brucei is now split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different species, right? So the diversity in this group was underestimated. Okay, so if we want to figure out if there was an early diversification in the Hemidactylus radiation, then we have to make sure that this kind of cryptic diversity is also well sampled, right? So we then went on to collect specimens across India and built a huge phylogeny, multiple individuals per species, and ran this phylogeny through what's called as species delimitation tools. These are methods that use phylogenies and figure out how many putative species there are. And it works under the assumption that intraspecific variation or difference between species is going to be a lot more than interspecific variation is going to be a lot more than intraspecific variation. So variation within species will be less when compared to the differences that you observe between species, right? So it's going to look at branch lengths and try and figure out how many putative species there are in your data set. Okay, so when we did that, we realized that there are over 50 species in the Hemidactylus radiation. Right now, people are describing many of these species after our work got published. We described maybe a few of those species. Others are in the process of describing many of the other species. So remember, this radiation, when we started this work, had only 17 species. Okay, now it has over 50 species. Okay, so once we had this, then we dated the phylogeny. And the root age of this clade is about 43 million years. Okay, and then one can use this phylogeny, dated phylogeny, to figure out to do some diversification analysis. Okay, and there is this test called gamma statistics, which basically counts up the number of new lineages across time. In fact, let me just show you. Yeah. So the idea is quite simple. You just, this is present and this is further back in time. As time elapses, how many new lineages are being accumulated? Right? If you just count it up, you start off with just one. Over here, you have 2 lineages. Here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lineages. Here, you have, at this time point, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lineages. At this point, you have maybe 8 or 10. So basically, as time elapses, the number of lineages increases, right? If you have a pure birth process, that is, if you have a situation where a speciation event is constant and species are accumulating with time at a constant rate, then you'll basically get a straight line like this, and the phylogeny will look something like this. Okay, but one can think of different kinds of phylogenies, right? This is the typical sort of phylogeny where there's pretty much constant rate of species accumulation. This is or lineage accumulation. This is a case of early burst, right? So there have been many lineage diversification events earlier in the phylogeny, followed by slowdown, right? So you have deep divergence. This is more recent burst. So for a long time, not many speciation events, and then you have a burst later, right? So the gamma statistics basically uses this idea. It says that, okay, I'm going to assume that there's a linear increase in lineages. Okay, that will give me a gamma of 0. And then I'm going to check to see what this is. The data set is showing. Is it less than 0? If it is less than 0, then it's early burst. If it is more than 0, it is a later burst, much later burst in speciation. So that's the whole idea of gamma statistics. Okay, when we did that, we got a very high negative gamma value. So this basically says there was an early burst in lineage accumulation and followed by saturation. And this sort of makes sense. This is something called diversity dependent diversification. And this is what you would expect in case of island radiations, right? The one ancestral species makes it to an island, and in case of adaptive radiations, one species makes it to this area where there are a lot of open niches. There's rapid bursts in speciation, accumulation in lineages. But as the niches get occupied, with time, there are less and less open niches, so your diversification rate plateaus, right? And that's basically what we find in case of hemidactyls, the endemic radiation that we have in India, okay? And we have actually done this on, one can build phylogenies using Bayesian inference. And in Bayesian inference, you actually can sample from posterior probability distribution. So you can get multiple phylogenies for your group of interest. And then for each of those phylogenies, you can calculate the gamma parameter. And we looked at some 37,000 trees, and basically most of them, the gamma value, all of them, the gamma value is negative, but the average gamma value is negative 3.5. So indeed, there was an early burst in speciation. So, and then we have done something called BAM analysis, Bayesian analysis of microevolutionary mixtures. This actually looks for rate shifts. And here again, what it shows is that earlier in the history of this clade, speciation rates were much higher, and then it drops as we go towards the depths. Okay. So multiple analysis seems to suggest that this is what has happened. So clearly, this is adaptive radiation, right? Because you have a monophyletic group, there is an early burst, there are many ecomorphs, right? So this is an adaptive radiation. Now the question then is, what caused this adaptive radiation? Okay. So for that, we have to go back in time. Hemidactylus made it to this particular radiation, made it to India after India collided with Asia. So the root age is about 35 to 40 million years. India sutures with Asia at around 35 million years. So it was not exactly an island anymore. It was an island until then, but at 35 it had already sutured, so it was not really an island anymore. And subsequently, because of rising Himalayas and establishment of the desert, it became an island again. But at that point in time, it was not really an island. So what caused this rapid early radiation, right? And if you look at the lineage to time plot, the LTT plot that I had showed here is called the LTT plot, lineage through time plot. This early burst actually corresponds to a time that people refer to as Eocene-Oligocene cooling. Okay, this is work done by Zakos, and basically they have shown, that in the early Eocene, temperatures were much warmer than today. So Eocene spans from about 55 million years to about 45 million years ago. So in early Eocene, temperatures were much higher, and then temperatures began to drop. It became cold, and once things start to get cold, water gets locked up in the ice sheets, right? So it becomes dry. And at the Eocene-Oligocene boundary, there was a sudden drop in temperature, right? So there was a huge shift in the climate around Eocene-Oligocene boundary, right? So the Eocene-Oligocene cooling is the most sort of prominent climatic shift after the Cretaceous. So I talked about the Cretaceous tertiary mass extinction. That was also, the world became very cool because of all the volcanic activity, as well as, the debris that was thrown into the atmosphere due to the meteor impact. So it became cold and dark, and many species went extinct. So that was also a major climatic shift that happened at 66 million years ago. Since then, the next major climatic shift, not as dramatic as the KT mass extinction, happened around the Eocene-Oligocene transition, right? So there was a massive drop in temperature. And that's around the time Hemidactylus also begins to diversify. So what happens when you have this cool, dry environment? Well, much of India was covered in wet forests. And with temperatures dropping and humidity dropping, a large part of this forest was probably converted into more drier forests, right? And Hemidactylus landed up at that point in time, and most Hemidactylus species are dry adapted, right? So we did ancestral reconstruction to see what was the ancestor like. Was it dry adapted or wet adapted, right? So these are all the current day Hemidactylus species. Some of them are wet adapted, but it looks like it's a more derived character, and the ancestral state was dry adapted, right? So the ancestral node of this radiation has a dry adapted state, so it is adapted to drier habitats, and it began diversifying between 39 to 42 million years ago, concurrent with the Eocene-Oligocene cooling, right? So this basically, and there's deep divergence between these species. So basically, the Eocene-Oligocene cooling served as an ecological opportunity, facilitating an early increase in lineage diversification in Hemidactylus. Right, so the Eocene-Oligocene cooling must have resulted in a lot of extinctions in India, right? So, and with the establishment of the more drier habitat, there must have been many open niches that was exploited by Hemidactylus, and it underwent rapid radiation. We have also looked at what was the rainfall regime like at that point in time, and it falls well within the low rainfall that we see in the dry zones of India, right? So these conditions were probably established long time ago. But there's another important point to make here, and that is late Miocene aridification. So after this initial aridification event, there was another dip in temperature during the late Miocene. Okay, and that resulted in establishment of grasslands. Okay, and you also have some ground-dwelling forms of Hemidactylus that evolved during that time. So the morphological divergence that we see in Hemidactylus came about much later. It didn't happen along with the early burst that we see here, right? So anyway, so that is the story that I wanted to share with you. So what really happened was much of India was, as I said, covered in humid forests, wet forests, which began to decline during EOC. And that might have resulted in a lot of extinction events. And remember, exactly at that point in time, India wasn't an island anymore, but it had been an island in the past and subsequently continued to be an island. So that might have also contributed to this adaptive radiation, because you don't want other species coming in from outside and occupying those niches. You know, you made it there and you can then radiate, right? So all these extinction events and climate-mediated extinction event provided the dry-adapted Hemidactylus an ideal opportunity to undergo radiation, right? So this is indeed an adaptive radiation, and it was probably triggered by Eocene, Oligocene climate change. So that is basically the story of the Hemidactylus radiation in India. I should point out that now people are, so after we talked about endemic radiation, people started reporting many other endemic radiations. Now people are also reporting adaptive radiations, other adaptive radiations in India. Though it's not been recorded systematically. For example, we have a frog genus called Rauchestus in the Western Ghats, and again it has crazy number of species, something like 50 or 60 species, and there again you have ecomorphs. You have forms that are that dwell in the canopy. There are some that dwell in the understory. There are some that are ground dwelling. And there's some that are close to the stream and so on. And these ecomorphs repeat themselves. As you go across Western Ghats, you see the similar pattern, different species, but the ecomorphs are there, right? And that appears to be an adaptive radiation also. So I'm sure there'll be many other examples. The Rauchestus work was done again in CES by Vijay Kumar, who is in Karthik Shankar's lab. So I think this is a fascinating story because adaptive radiations were thought to be found only in islands, right? I'm not talking about adaptive radiations in case of mammals. That is a huge radiation. I'm talking about just say one genus, right? Like Darwin's finches. So such that's genus Geospiza. Such radiations were thought to be found only on islands, but here's a continental radiation, which is adaptive. So I think that's really quite fascinating. Okay, I think I will stop there. I've taken a lot of your time. I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karan. It was a very good example that you have thrown about classical science.
Yeah.
And, we have got so many teachers from college as well as schools here. And what kind of activities we can have to initiate young people into this kind of studies?
Well, molecular studies nowadays, I mean, this kind of study nowadays is not very expensive. You just need a very bare minimum molecular lab, PCR machine, centrifuge and all that, which can be probably established in just like 10, 15 lakhs. And sequencing is very cheap nowadays, right? So work of this kind can be carried out just about anywhere. The only thing is so generating this kind of data is not a problem anymore, but then data analysis, that has to be done with a lot of caution. So that is where things, I've seen that many papers that come out of India, they have not done a good job with data analysis as well as with sampling. One has to do thorough sampling to get to address any interesting question. So, so this can be done. In case of data analysis, we offer a workshop every year on molecular phylogenetics. So this year again, we'll be offering it sometime in August. We had it online for 2 years, and then last December we had it offline for the first time in 2 years. This year definitely is going to be offline. So, you know, people who are interested in taking up this kind of work, just look out for the ad in our website, and then we also advertise it in a couple of other places. Yeah.
So dear participants, the topic is open for discussion. You can type in your questions in chat box also. Otherwise, if you want to interact directly with Dr. Karan, you can raise your hand so that we can make yourself to unmute your mic.
Sir, one more question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, regarding the ecomorphs, plant species changes their morphological structure based on the climatic conditions. So some broad leaves, small leaf, flowers or something. So can we call as ecomorphs? Those?
No. That's, you're talking about variation within a species, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's more phenotypic plasticity.
It may affect the genetic sequence also, sir.
But if it is within a species, then I don't know how it's going to affect the genetic composition. But what I'm talking
about, very long or something. The changes should be in long term. That way.
Yeah, long term, maybe they might speciate and become two different species. But when I'm talking about ecomorphs, I'm talking about species that are specialized to exploit a particular niche.
Okay.
Right. So and they have evolved multiple times.
Whether the climate change affects the ecomorphs or species?
Climate change will affect all species.
Okay.
Yeah. Not just one particular ecomorph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions from the students? Come on, let's hear them.
What I understand from Dr. Balaguru's question is those kind of ecomorphs are a result of epigenetic changes instead of gene level variations. That is what I have understood.
No. It's not epigenetic changes. It's just convergence. It's different species that are exploiting the same ecological zone or same niche. So it's just convergence.
Okay.
But these species are not related.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have this at the higher level. You see this everywhere. For example, if you go to the different deserts around the world, you have rodent species that look very similar. The ones in Sahara, in Thar Desert or Atacama Desert, but these are not related. It's just convergence, right? Yeah.
Okay, now I got it.
Yeah.
Looking for any questions from chat box? No.
Where is the chat box? I don't see the chat box here.
In the bottom of the screen, if you move your cursor, you can find chat.
I see. Okay.
But no questions are there, sir.
Okay. Fine. People can just send me an email, whatever, So if you have any questions, if you need any of these papers, send me an email. I'll be happy to send them across. Yeah. And I hope that, even in small colleges, you guys should take up studies like this, and it's not terribly expensive, as I said, and there's lots to be explored still in India. There's a lot of undescribed diversity and some fascinating, species, and one can address many interesting evolutionary questions. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of possibility to describe new species also if you take
Yes.
kind of studies.
Yes. Yeah, but that's gone a bit too far nowadays, you know, and everyone wants a new species, their name associated with a new species. So they are, you know, in a mad rush to describe new species. Often they do a shoddy job. Often it's not a new species, and someone else has to come and sync it. So whatever you do, just I think as researchers, we have to be very methodical and you know. Put in the due diligence, you know.
And that too, if we work on this kind of lesser known taxon, like
Yeah.
there is a more scope for that. It
True,
was
true.
really inspiring to listen your lecture.
Okay.
If there are no more questions, we can wind up the session, sir.
Okay. Great. Thanks. I got to run now. Can I? Is there anything else left?
Yes, sir. Nothing. You can leave, sir.
Okay. Great. Thanks a lot for
Thank you
having
very
me.
much for spending your
Yeah.
valuable time with us, Dr. Karan. It was really
Okay.
amazing to listen to your lecture. Thank you very
All
much.
right. All right. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you very much. Dear participants, we can always send your questions through email to Dr. Karan. You can find his email ID in Indian Institute of Science website. Now let us move on to the next session. And maybe if you want to have an off-screen time, you can leave your system logged in and you can come back quickly. Anytime your feedback link will be posted. So be present to fill the feedback form so that it will enable us to give you the participant certificate. Dr. Balaguru, shall we move to the next session?
Sir,
Okay. Just check with Dr. Ramasubbu.
Okay.
If he has logged in, we can move on. Otherwise, we shall wait for him.
Okay, sir.
Dear participants, I have posted the link for finding email ID for Dr. Karan. If you have any questions in future, you can contact him.
Good morning, sir. Sir, you can unmute your mic, sir. Yes. Sir, shall we start, sir?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, please.
You can share your slide from there itself. We have made you a co-host for this meeting. Dear participants, it is time to move on to the next session. Here we have another eminent researcher, Dr. R. Ramasubbu, who is currently working as assistant professor in Gandhigram Rural University. He has experience of 10 years in research and 6 years of teaching, and he is specializing in the field of has a research experience with the specialization of forest biodiversity, conservation, and plant ecology. Dr. Ramasubbu has published a total of 9 books, and he has contributed to 23 chapters in books, and he has 20 papers to his credit in both edited volumes and journals. And his total number of publications in international and national journals amount to 52. So for the sake of his specialization, understanding his specialization, I'm reading out some of his important projects that he has taken up, and these following papers express his vast experience in the field of plant taxonomy, that too especially in the plant group called impatiens. So the list goes extensive. I will read out only a few for your perusal. Reproductive biology of Heliocarpus blascoi, and an endemic and endangered tree species of Palni Hills. Impatiens Matthew Ivana, a new scapigerous balsam from Western Ghats, India. Impatiens cotolensis, belonging to the family Balsaminae, a new species of impatiens from Western Ghats, Tamil Nadu, India. Rediscovery of Impatiens munarensis, a strict endemic balsam of southwestern Ghats. Reproductive ecology of Impatiens platyadina, a critically endangered balsam of Western Ghats. So all these works he has published in coveted journals like Current Science, Phytotaxa, Bangladesh Journal of Botany, and Current Science. So he also has a lot of credits with respect to major and minor research projects. So he has carried out the major research projects with the financial outlay of rupees 31.25 lakhs, and the title of the projects are quite interesting. Reproductive ecology and conservation of Garcinia imbershi and Garciniana travancourica, endemic and endangered tree species from Agastya Malay Biosphere Reserve. Studies on population dynamics, in vitro propagation, and conservation of 3 endemic and endangered trees of Western Ghats. So, Dr. Ramasubbu has taken up so much of challenging job in his research. Instead of taking up a comfortable journey, he has taken up the journey of entering into the forest and intervening with the conservation of biology, both in vitro as in situ as well as ex situ conservation projects. So he is an expert in this field of taxonomy, especially molecular taxonomy. And he is also another apt person for delivering a lecture in this national webinar. He has also served with additional responsibilities of serving as a NSS program officer, working committee member of IQAC in his university, and member of Green Audit Committee, and member of Sanitation Subcommittee, and he is the coordinator of Trekking Club. He is not only a life member, but a live member in IUCN, IAAT, ISPM, as well as SPRB. So with this little introduction, let me hand over the screen to Dr. Ramasubbu for his presentation. Sir, may I request you to share your screen, sir?
Why not, sir? Please, just a minute.
Sure, we will wait, sir.
Is it okay, sir? Will you be able to see my screen?
Yes, sir. You can go for presentation mode.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Very good morning, everyone. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
100%.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Most respected principal, Jamal Mohamed College, Tiruchirappalli, respected Professor Gauss Basha, Head Department of Botany, esteemed colleagues of Department of Botany, Jamal Mohamed College, and participants from various parts of the country, professors, research scholars, and media students. It is my privilege as well as an honor to be the part of this event with a guest lecture in this topic, that is the biodiversity in the Western Ghats. So this topic is exclusively about my travel experience for the last 15 years in the Western Ghats at different parts, starting from the Tamil Nadu to Gujarat. Unfortunately, I have not covered the biodiversity component of Gujarat. Okay, nowadays, the people who are working with the biological things or the biological teachers, they are not at all interested to go with field. So they want to be a laboratory scientist. Of course, there is a reason. They need a highly cited paper, they need a citations. Of course, they need a fund. If we go with the classical aspect of research, we are unable to do like this. We can't publish. Even if you go with taxonomic research or some kind of pollination research, we can't reach the impact factor of not more than 3. Of course, we don't have, we unable to receive much citation from various people. Why? Because the people who are working with this kind of research, very limited. So don't think that. Of course, we must be concentrated with our environment. So very few people alone working this kind of research. So as the younger generation or the people who are here, please be attentive with our environment, particularly the biodiversity system like this. So this topic is exclusively with the biodiversity in the Western Ghats. So you may think, what is the reason behind the choice of this topic in the sense, usually, so we may not or we don't aware about the various component of the ecosystem which is available nearby. Just a minute. Slides is okay. Now it's moving. Okay. So we need to give a special care. Of course, those who need to work in the laboratory, let them do the work in the laboratory. But we have to create to care about our environment. So this topic, I hope this topic may trigger some interesting fact about the Western Ghats, as well as this can be directed you to do some research in the Western Ghats. Before starting to this, we must care on some information about the vegetation cover of the world. So far, 12 different type of vegetations have been reported in the world. Fortunately, India is gifted with 4 more ecosystems. Biodiversity hotspot. While starting with while working with the biodiversity, we may not forget the term hotspot. That means the area with a high species richness. Fortunately, this globe is gifted with 35 biodiversity hotspot. Interestingly, the Asia Pacific, where we are staying, here we have 14 different biodiversity hotspots. Biodiversity is a general term. People may call it as a variety and variability of organisms or variety of life and its process. So this can be categorized in different ways. This is one among the way the species diversity, ecosystem diversity, as well as genetic diversity. So based upon the geographical position as well as based upon the biodiversity availability in India, we can classify Indian area into 5 different components: Trans-Himalayas, Himalayas, Desert, Deccan Peninsula, Northeast India, Island, as well as the coast. So the Western Ghats, which is the one among the biogeographical region in India, so with much species richness as well as ecosystem importance. These photographs clearly shows the vegetation cover of India. See, according to the recent census by Forest Survey of India, India has about more than 21% of forest cover. Okay, so while talking with the biodiversity, we can't omit the word forest. The people thought that the forest is nothing but a kind of tree or assemblage of tree or a group of tree. It is not exactly. It is a world of insects, birds, amphibians. It is a world of different kind of flora as well as a fauna. So usually we may use the forest as well as the allied area for our enchantment or relaxation, something. But if we calculate the benefit of the forest, say for example, see, if we spend 1 rupee to conserve the forest ecosystem and its biota, definitely we can get back about 2,500 rupees. For 1 rupees, we can get more than 2,499 rupees we can get from the forest. So it can be a direct benefit or indirect benefit. Direct by means of providing employment, tourism, fodder, NWFE, etc. Or indirect benefit means we can control the global warming. So water bodies can be conserved, soil can be reclamated as a protected. Then moreover, the environment can be conserved in a better manner. So forest wealth, every country should have the landmass with about 20% with the forest cover. India fortunately got that quantity of forest. So this is a census of 1997. 2021, another census is conducted in which 21.3% of the forest cover has been reported in India by Forest Survey of India. With about 7.3 lakh square kilometers. So here, this is not only a simple kind of forest, it is a variety of forest. This has been endowed with tropical evergreen forests in the northeastern region to a tropical thorn forest in the central and southern part of the India. So interestingly, we have officially classified 14 different forests or so-called 16 different forest types along with the 221 subtypes. So these are the 14 different forest types reported in the world. Say for example, starting from wet evergreen forest, semi-evergreen forest, moist evergreen forest, subtropical dry evergreen forest, like that. In India alone, we have a variety of forest. So these photographs clearly explain the diversity and the distribution of different 14 different type of forests distributed in and around the Indian subcontinent. So in which we can say the tropical dry deciduous forests as well as the subtropical broadleaf hill forest have dominated. But of course, we have a wonderful ecosystem that is a moist evergreen as well as wet evergreen as well as a moist evergreen forest. So this is what we are touching with the main topic, Western Ghats. It's a continuous chains of mountains of 1,600 kilometers running parallel to west coast from river Tapti to Kanyakumari. Not only that, it crosses around 6 states. Maharashtra, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, as well as Kerala. So why we have to give much importance to Western Ghats in the sense, it is a paradise. it is nothing but, paradise. So this region alone harbor about 27% of the Indian flora. It's unimaginable. So about 6,500 species of flowering plants alone have been reported here, including about 2,500 endemic species. Endemic, the taxa or the organism is restricted to the particular geographical regions. About a variety of birds, amphibians, mammals, as well as reptiles. So, in addition to that, there are few areas in the Western Ghats have been reported as economically or ecologically as well as scientifically wonderful areas. Say for example, if we talk about the Agastya Malai, in the Agastya Malai region alone, about 2,000 species have been reported. Even Nilgiris, the joining area of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, as well as Karnataka. Moreover, in which this area is alone connected with the Eastern Ghats as well as Western Ghats. This region is a potential hotspot for plant diversity. About 2,600 plant species have been reported. In Silent Valley, 1,300. Even Animalay and adjoining area, about 2,200 species. So these are all specific area in which, these are, I have arranged in altitude range. So these are the potential hotspot for plant diversity. Of course, it's associated insects. Okay, this area is reported as a wonderful diversity of insects along with the plant diversity too. So these are all some few region. I'm going to show some important or ecologically as well as the biodiversity rich region. So this is nothing but Upper Palni Hills. This so-called your Kodaikanal. This region is economically as well as a potential ecological important hotspot. So Agastya Malai Biosphere Reserve is a part of this Biosphere Reserve harbor a wet evergreen forest, or otherwise simply we can say rainforest. It's a wonderful area, a harbor so much of diversity of animal species, of course. This is a grassland. So once upon a time, we have not realized the impact of this biodiversity and ecosystem. Ecosystem here, this is a complex ecosystem. Just a minute. It's a complex ecosystem. Here, vast area of grassland associated with stunted trees. This is simply known as tropical mountain forest. Our people or the South Indians or particularly Tamilian named this region as Sholas, Solai Kadagal. So this is a peculiar ecologically significant ecosystem. Fortunately, the South India, particularly Tamil Nadu and Kerala, gifted with this kind of wonderful ecosystem. So how far it is significant? See here, usually if the rainfall, during the time of rainfall, if the top of the hill receives the water, ultimately it reaches to the plain or it can be eroded to the plain immediately. So this is what a quite common phenomenon taking place in and around the forest region. But interestingly, this region, here a kind of grassland is growing here. This has growing for about more than 1,000 or 2,000 years. Here, keep on growing here and sedimented here. This has created a sponge-like structure. This sponge can prevent or stagnant the water for considerable time period. So, say for example, 100% rainfall here in the sense about 60 to 70% of the water would be protected here. This is nothing but water reservoir, this grassland. Thereafter, simply it releases by means of small furrows like this. So these small furrows receives a water component, then finally it connected with the small streams. So finally, these connected streams, with a larger river like this, finally it reaches as waterfalls. Now we can correlate or now we can assume that so wherever we are getting a waterfalls through a major part of the days in a year, there may be a chance for the presence of this kind of solar forest. See here, Kodagu, it is a unique region in which the our king cobra can breed luxuriantly here. This ecosystem is a wonderful for protecting the king cobra, of course. So, Irregular National Park, It is a one among the region is established to protect not only the solar forest but also its associated fauna, that is Nilgiri tar. So simply we named as our state animal of Tamil Nadu. So Madhikettan Sola. Usually people may call it as some region as Madhikettan Sola. If the person get inside the forest, definitely they may lose their sense, but not exactly. That is not the real meaning of naming of this kind of forest. Usually the trekkers or biologists or forest dwellers, they may have some tricks to explore the forest region. While getting inside, they may trace the sunlight from where we are coming or from where to where we go to go. Unfortunately, this kind of sunlight penetration may not be there in this kind of forest, Madhikettan Sola. So while entering into this forest region, we may not realize from where we came or to where we go to go. We may get confused. Such kind of behavior may be happened in this kind of forest. Otherwise, no plants have been reported or no part of the plants have been reported to lose your sense. So this is the real meaning of this kind of forest. See here, according to my knowledge, in South India alone, we have 3 different Madhikettan Sola. One is in Bodimettu. We are bordering with the Kerala. There they may have solar forest. Of course, in Berijam, in Kodaikanal, we have one more Madhikettan Sola. If you go to Kolli Hills, there you can also see one more Madhikettan Sola. That's such kind of wonderful ecosystem. They harbor not only the plant diversity, of course, the variety of animal diversity too. Animal, it is a potential hotspot. Okay, so this region in Anamalai Tiger Reserve, bordering between Tamil Nadu as well as Kerala, this region has reported with a variety of plant diversity in its ecosystem. Nilgiris, as I told, this is a part in which 3 different states connect together. So this region is also reported with a huge quantity of solar forest and its associated components. Meghamalai is a misty mountains. People may call it as a misty mountain. This is also a potential hotspot for some selected group of plant diversity and its associated fauna. So this is what happening with grassland or some huge sized trees. What about the undergrowth? What about the undergrowth? What is the status of the undergrowth area means? So this is also not only with a unique ecosystem. It is a variety of plant diversity as well as associated insects can be seen. See here, you can see Utricularia, Erioclan, Smithia, Drosera, variety of plant species may be there. Here is a combination of Utricularia as well as the Erioclan can be seen. Interestingly, in some cases, we can see the monoculture like wild species. This is wild species. It is not planted or grown by somebody. It's a wild species. This Maharashtra, that is Mahabaleshwar, Plateau. This diversity has exhibited in the entire part of the mountains for about 3 to 6 months. Thereafter, it won't grow immediately; it will die. They can dispose the seeds for a particular period. So, in biodiversity, particularly biodiversity and Western Ghats, we are going to talk about 2 components only. We are not going to touch with the microbial diversity. So we can go with the plant diversity. You know that the classification of plants, algae, fungi, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm, angiosperm. But the basic research or recent research supported the bacteria and the virus must be included in plant diversity, of course. So these are all the number of species reported in the world as well as in India. As I told India is gifted with wonderful plant diversity, not only with huge quantity, but of course we have varieties. These are all some species. Endemism, if we concentrate or if we study about the endemism of Indian flora, see here in angiosperm we have a good quantity of endemic plants, 33% of endemism. Endemism, that kind of plants available only in India. You can't collect or you can't see this kind of plant diversity in other part of the world. That is a peculiarity in India. See, as I told you, fungal diversity. Actually, the fungi must be separated from the plant kingdom. There are few characters, specific characters suggested to remove the plant diversity. So these are all some important as well as economically valuable species growing in Western Ghats. Say, for example, it is a meat fungi. It's a highly toxic meat fungi. Of course, this you might have been seen somewhere. It is also toxic mushroom. So this toxicity can be utilized as a beneficial component to the human beings. So this kind of mushrooms or this kind of material from the forest can be considered or taken back from the forest to utilize. That is what is happening nowadays. Lot of research is going on to isolate or to recover some potentially important phytocompounds or biochemical components for the beneficial aspect of human beings. This is a wild edible mushrooms can be seen. Termitomyces, the fungi grower in the forest, termites. Of course, these are some mushrooms quite commonly seen in deciduous as well as in the area with limited rainfall. This is a potential medicinally promising mushroom. Of course, magic mushroom. The people call it as a magic mushroom. Psilocybin, it is a potential phytocompound isolated from this mushroom, have able to cure so many diseases. But this has been used as a common drug in and around the region with the solar forest, particularly Kodaikanal. So now this has been prohibited. Of course, Ganoderma lucidum. We standardize the cultivation practices of this mushroom. But of course, the people or forest dwellers collect this mushroom from the wild only. Huge quantity, tons and tons of these mushrooms have been transported to, exported to some other foreign countries for drug discovery. There are some unique plant diversity like lichens. It's an association of fungi and algae have come in combination. They are growing here now. These mushroom, these lichens can be used as spices. Not only that, this is a important pollution indicator, of course. So we can detect air pollution in the environment. So these are all some kind of ferns. Then not only cherishing the plant diversity of the particular area, but also it nurtures the variety of bird species as well as associated insect diversity. So they are growing in the tree trunks or something, they are also providing some nutritive material to the animal diversity. So these are all some aquatic plants wherever the lower elevation of Western Ghats, in which, we can see aquatic bodies with a variety of plant species. Okay, variety of plant species, Salvinia. In some cases, Marsilia can be seen, but at lower altitudes of Western Ghats spot. These are all some interesting ferns which indicate the presence of gold particles in the soil. Of course, the exotics during the British colonial period. So unknowingly or knowingly, that those people who have invaded in India, they planted a huge quantity or huge number of exotic species. But nowadays, this has been converted as obnoxious weed to our environment. These plant diversity ultimately spoiling our environment. So these are all some fine species, but they are economically important, of course. But if we analyze the long-term usage of this plant diversity, ultimately they spoil our natural ecosystem. Banksia, these are all some planted in somewhere. It is a kind of gymnosperm. So sequoia, we can see in Colli Hills or some part of even Sirmalai, they have planted 2 more individuals. Nagilia, it is an endemic gymnosperms, can be seen in some part of Meghamalai and Kalakad Mundandarai Tiger Reserve and some other parts. There, of course, this has been recently included on list concern by IUCN. These are all tree ferns. So wherever you go, in Kodaikanal or Nilgiris or somewhere, if you see this kind of ferns, tree ferns in the environment, definitely you can assume that this area must be, or the plant where growing, that area must be once upon a time it must be the solar forest or its associated ecosystem. Angiosperms. If we talk about angiosperms, so many people in India as well as the world, they are working. So these are the interesting group with much diversification, not only in the vegetative part, but of course in the sexual part of the angiosperm. We may have or we may expect much diversity. See, in some lower elevated area, this kind of individuals like in Nilambu, so indicating the water quality, of course, water quality. So these are all some lily, nymphaea species. Of course, some Aponogeton species, Nilambu again. So these are all not only ecologically significant, but also they provide economic benefit to the human beings who are living in and around. So while utilizing this, or we may use some word, sustainable utilization. We have to utilize the forest as well as its resources or wild resources, but at the same time, we have to provide some, or we have to take some necessary steps to conserve this kind of individuals. So this is an interesting plant is a sister group of impatiens. Okay, once upon a time, this is quite common in Gangetic plain. Okay, not only the Gangetic plain, in case of Kaveri Delta. So here we can see huge quantity of this kind of species. But the periodical usage of pesticide as well as the fertilizer, ultimately eradicate these herbaceous species from the environment. Nowadays, it is somewhat difficult to see this kind of individuals in the Tanjavur or in the nearby areas. Impatient, it is another interesting group reported with the vast number of species with spectacular or diversified color, shape, ornamentation, etc. In these Western Ghats, it is a potential hotspot for as far as impatiens is concerned. So far in India, about more than 600 species have been reported, but in these Western Ghats alone harbors about more than 65 species. Whereas the Himalaya, they may have their own kind of species with a different morphology and ornamentations. These are all not only the important species, but it has some horticulture potential. Those people working with different kinds of flowers or horticulture research, they can utilize this kind of resources for commercialization. So this leads to not only conserve the species, but also we can utilize the biodiversity of the environment. So these are all some specific key species in the Western Ghats. Impatiens, Tangachi. These are all impatiens, Gardneriana. Of course, these are all some specific features. We only discovered this species, named to honor Father Matthew, Impatiens Matthewiana. Of course, Megamalayana, Impatiens Megamalayana, these are all Anamalayana. Some kind of Phoenicia. This is a keystone species. Keystone species which indicate the one insect species. Pulcherima, it's quite common in Maharashtra. The people used to collect the petal of this plant for some cooking purpose. This is the only, a ground orchid reported as a critically endangered in Agastya Malay. Moreover, this is the only orchid reported as a highly priced in India. Highly priced. So, if you keep this kind of orchids offense, according to Schedule 2, Government of India, we can't grow these orchids. It is a more protected orchid species, ground orchid species. Paphiopedilum pedulum drury. We have a project to conserve this species for about 27 lakhs sanctioned to conserve this species. Some orophytic species are rock-loving species, they are strictly adhere in the soil, but rock with limited soil particles. They are luxuriantly growing this kind of species. Sonorilla, Palniensis parameswarani, or some kind of climbing sandals. Scleropinum pendantrum, it is a monotypic species. Eleocarpus. So people have a curiosity as well as they have their religious belief, vast quantity of seeds of different species of Eleocarpus have been collected from the forest. In India, we have a 33 species of Elaeocarpus. Simply in your words, varieties. Okay, 33 species of Elaeocarpus have been reported in India. Fortunately, Western Ghats alone harbor about 15 species. 15 species. People usually call it as a 1 muga, 2 muga, 3 muga, like that. So don't believe that these are all not religiously significant or potential. This is because of the abnormality in the during the sexual fertilization. So if you see one muga, two locules have been aborted. Only one locule fertilized its ovary and developed as a fruits. That's all. So no other significance or religious beliefs are there with this kind of Rudraksha. Why I'm talking this means we are working with this kind of Elaeocarpus species in the Western Ghats particularly. We got a fund for about 50 lakhs for one project, another 27 lakhs for another project. So through which we are working to conserve or reinstore the species in the Western Ghats. These are one among the species, Elaeocarpus tuberculatus. Nowadays, this is a neglected species once upon a time. The people, they started to collect this kind of seeds during the pilgrimage period, in Sabrimala. The people used to sell this kind of seeds in the market. So this is a exclusively endemic species to the Meghamalai Wildlife Sanctuary. We are working to analyze the reproductive ability of these species, of course. Again, it is also an endangered species, limited distribution reported. It's a lonely endemic species. Only one surviving individuals have been reported once upon a time. Thereafter, we did some research or field work through which we identify some mature individuals in Kodaikanal Wildlife Sanctuaries. It's another interesting. Locally, this species is known as a karikai. People use these fruits for some pickle preparations. Of course, variety of cinnamon, economically important species. These leaves, dried leaves can be used as spices, potential spices. So far, about 27 species of cinnamons have been reported. So almost all the species have the potential phytocompounds as well as aromatic compound that can be used as a potential spices in the for the culinary purposes. It is another Filipediculatum, cinnamon pediculatum. This leaf can also be used as a the spices. This is a little known species, Nothopodatis pneumoniana. These leaves can be used nowadays. The people are working to isolate some anti-cancerous drug from these leaves. The research is going on. There are some species, they are holding their phytocompounds in the root system. Unfortunately, they kept this kind of potential compound in the root system. So those people who are looking behind the phytocompounds, they are completely exploiting this kind of plants. These are herbaceous species. They are completely removing the root system, the plant along with the root system for the drug discovery as well as some other phytocompounds preparations. So, Camperia, this is Cacholam locally known as this tuberino that has been used as a medicinally promising material. The word specific epithet can define the usage of this species. Polarina anti-dysenterica. It can be utilized against dysentery. So it can cure dysentery for human beings, like that. Attileria salicifolia. Now this name of this species, Decalopis salicifolia. This is a potential raw material, the tuberino. This can be cure ulcers. Okay, so this is a native species as well as endemic species to Anamalai tiger reserves as well as a part of Kodaikanal Wildlife Sanctuary. So it is growing in a barren rock. The tribal peoples who collected this in Magali Klang, locally known as Magali Klang, they are collecting this tuber from the forest and selling in the market, but they don't know the importance of this species. This is Janakia Arayalpatra. Nowadays name is Decalopis Arayalpatra. This species has been named to honor the former curator of Royal Botanical Garden, called Calcutta, Jamal. So this species is also wonderful medicinally. promising species. Again, it's repeated. Okay, so nowadays, obesity is a major problem among the kids. Okay, so in nature we have solutions. So interestingly, the people in Kerala as well as a part of Goa, they are utilizing this kind of fruit for cooking purpose. So this is not only used for used as a spices, but also it cures some diseases. Interestingly, these fruits have hydroxycitric acid. That is an anti-cholestemic effect is there with this compound. It prevent the cholesterol deposition in blood. Okay, this is another sister species. It also have this kind of similar fruits. This is what Garcinia Travancoricea. Again, these fruits can be used as a used as a spices as well as the to prevent anti-cholestemic cholestemic deposition in the blood. So once upon a time, it's quite common in the forest, but nowadays these species can be seen in as a hedge plant as well as ornamental tree in most of the part of the Kerala as well as the hilly regions of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. This is also a medicinally promising species. There are some species restricted distribution in Agassimalai forest and southern forest, southern Western Ghats. These species also have some unique features. This can be used as a wild ornamental, of course. So these are the important as well as critically endangered species existing with a few more individuals in the environment. This is a potentially medicinally promising species, of course. These are all unique strict endemic species to Agassimalai biosphere reserve. But still we have a confusion with the nomenclature of both species, Unichuga and Trichuga. That is not required to us. These are all some common species which has a potential medicinal compound. So Erythrina variegata, Erythrina superosa, or Erythrina spinosa, like that. So these species, the bark of these species, quite commonly using the people for so many ailments, particularly to promote fertility. Syzygium. The people usually seen a few more species of Syzygium, or otherwise they may tasted the fruits of Syzygium, Syzygium cumini. That is what Syzygium cumini. But interestingly, India alone have about 78 species of Syzygium. That means 78 varieties of Syzygiums can be seen. So there is 78 varieties of fruits can be seen in the wild. Unfortunately, so we lost so many individuals. So in Tamil Nadu and Kerala alone harbor with a higher number of species. That is about Tamil Nadu and Kerala alone have around 48 species of Syzygium. See, this is one among the Syzygium. Silanicum, this is a Bharati to honor the Tamil poet Bharati. This is another ornamental species of Syzygium. It's a wild species, Syzygium sachidharani. Then Ramavarma. It is a strict endemic species to Agassimalai biosphere reserve. Of course, Syzygium parameswarni, Syzygium mundagam, mundroni, of course. So there are some unique or the keystone species which indicate the presence or absence of the individuals growing nearby. Interestingly, this is a unique species, Rhododendron arboreum, subspecies Ilgyricum. So still the researchers who are working behind, or still the taxonomists have get confused how this rhododendron has originated from Himalayas to South India. So still it's a question. Okay, still it's a question. So here this is a unique trees growing in Sola forest alone. So moreover, this has been named as a fire-resistant tree. So Neela Kurunji, so far about 28 species, according to my knowledge, 28 species of Kurunji has been reported in Sobalans have been reported in India. This is one among the species. People believe these species flowers once in a 12 years, but it's not exactly. Actually, what is happening here, due to the gregarious flowering of these species alone, looks like once in a 12 years. But the individuals are growing as well as flowering every year. This is another endemic species with a high potential medical compound. This is a highly useful spices. Nowadays, it has been cultivated in the higher altitudes of so many parts of the country. It's Jadi Patri. It's a wild Mystica bedomi. People are, instead of Mystica fragrance, people are collecting these species for the commercial utilization. Hopia ponga, of course, it don't have much economic importance of the fruit and leaves, but the tree trunk, it has a higher economic value. The people cutting the tree throughout the forest regions of the southern Western Ghats, but unfortunately, we lost so many number of individuals in the forest. Nowadays, the sacred groves of Kerala, as well as the part of the Nilgiris, they are holding or they are keeping this kind of trees with good care and protections. I have to mention few of the important with this. Usually the people, those who are in a forest dwellers or trekkers or somebody, they may have some tricks to avoid the periodical, feeling of hungry. So this is one among the species. These fruits can be consumed to arrest your hungry. Okay, you should arrest your hungriness. Not only the hungriness, but it promote you to be an active person for one day. If you take 5 or 6 or 7 fruits, you can be active throughout the day. Moreover, you may not feel hungry, of course. It is a wonderful tree species, but there are so many medical formulations originated from the trees. The leaves are having wonderful medicinal potential compounds. There are some keystone species, edible fruits. Not only that, the Western Ghats is a natural reservoir. So we can get so much quantity of phytocompounds, spices. There are some important wood materials, some non-wood forest products like Acacia conchina, or some marking nut, or simply known as sambrani, like that you can get from Kungilium. So we can get from the forest resources. So not only that, this is a reservoir, as I told, it won't, those who are dwelling in the forest, they may have some tricks to get a water from the forest, of course. We don't exploit, without exploiting the forest resources, we can utilize this. These are the 2 important tree species through which we can get a water, of course. So why we need to concentrate? Of course, it is a variety of resources we have, but unfortunately, whatever we assessed or whatever the plant diversity we assessed, so we found that they are under heavy risk of extinction. They are under danger. See here, in India alone, about 21,000 of plant trees exclusively. Trees are under verge of extinction. See, these are all the different group of plants in which the number of individuals are under high risk of extinction. You can see here. So this is what we discuss about plant diversity. The next component is animal diversity. So I am not much expertise. I don't have much expertise to name the species or identify with the animal species which is there in the forest. But of course I can show some individuals here. So this is a common as well as accepted classification of animal kingdom from Protista, Mollusca, Arthropoda, Prochordata, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, apes, as well as mammals. See here, these are the list of estimated number of species in India as well as in the world. But interestingly, if we see that diversity of animal, so very interestingly, the bird diversity is somewhat significant in India, as well as followed by fishes. So these 2 groups, dominant in India, reported with the higher percentage when compared to other countries. See, if we see the mammals exclusively, if we see the mammal diversity, so again, see here about 261. Or simply we can say about 450 species are under verge of extinction, exclusively mammals. Mammals alone under verge of extinction. But unfortunately, we have not analyzed the entire biota of the world as well as in India. So whatever they did, limited. This is what I mentioned in the earlier time. So very few researches have been conducted. Limited people are alone working. So through that limited data, so we got this much quantity of result. So we must take care of the biodiversity of India, particularly with special emphasis with the Western Ghats. See, this is what quite common. Usually, I show some photo. I can ask the people to guess the name of this animal diversity. So these animals are quite familiar. So every school kids, each if we show among the school kids, they can able to say these are a giraffe, zebra, ostrich, or hippopotamus. But they unable to name the species like this. What is if you ask somebody what is the name of the species? Nobody knows. Very limited people can able to name the name of this species. So what is the real fact? Why we have to remember the species in the sense they are the close relatives. So they are restricted to Western Ghats, particularly southern Western Ghats. Nowhere you can see this kind of individuals in the world. We need give special importance to protect this kind of individuals. Okay, so these are all for some important animal species. They are exclusively endemic to southern Western Ghats, or simply can say Western Ghats. So these are all some species. See here, this bird is termed as named as a state bird of Tamil Nadu, but very few limited people alone know the name of the species. This is a barking deer, is emerald pigeon. There's a mouse deer or Nilgiri tar, palm civet, slender loris. Interestingly, this palm civet, once upon a time during the period of Travancore, okay, Travancore, the Travancore as well as Malabar regions, the Travancore regions completely occupied by means of this palm civet. Very quite common in even household, where if they planted a tree, definitely in that tree, this kind of palm civet can be seen. But nowadays, very limited. So they are restricted to interior forest regions. Maranai in Tamil, Maranai, in Malayalam, Marapatti. So of course, in water bodies, we can see variety of fishes. Nowadays, when compared to the plant taxonomists, animal taxonomists are very limited. Very few people, according to my knowledge, few people working with the fishes and the insects, or somebody with the birds. But the other groups, that have been declared as a neglected group of, animals. So because we need to explore the forest, we have to spend our time in the field. We can't, wear a sophisticated coat or something. That is the real reason. Moreover, if we approach the government or something to generate a fund for the research, the government said, no. So these are all classical compound. We are not ready to fund for this kind of research. Then who will take care of this kind of individuals, So may or may not be, if we funded, with our research ability, we must at least touch with the biodiversity component of the Western Ghats. So these are all simply we may see in somewhere is a honeybees. So because of this kind of insect, the forest is living as such. Or we are getting a food, we are getting a spices, we are getting other medicinally important plants. So without like this insect, we can't imagine the world. See, these are all trigona species. Of course, these kind of individuals have been restricted to some part of the regions, but they are ecologically unique species. So these are all, while looking, so these are all some insects. They are a limit. We may give limited attention or little attention, but they are ecologically significant. Of course, like these insects, of course, butterflies. When compared to honeybees and bumblebees or moth or something, these insects also have significant. They are also nourishing the forest resources. They are getting food resources also something from the forest, but also they are giving back to the environment. See, these are all some wonderful butterflies. See here. Of course, some amphibians. We lost the exact nature of our aquatic bodies. See, nowadays we quite calmly support wherever we go, or wherever the cities or villages, anywhere, if some aquatic bodies are there, definitely we may support with the mosquitoes. So once everywhere there was a ecosystem with the aquatic bodies, but at that time we have not supported much with the mosquitoes. But nowadays it is not exactly because of these kind of animals. So these kind of amphibians, may affect or may control the insect diversity in the water bodies. Ultimately, we can control the nuisance insects like mosquitoes. Of course, Big Four of India. So wherever you see, people try to kill these animals. So the real reason is we thought that, or we believe that this may are dangerous to the human, but not exactly. Human alone dangerous to this kind of individuals. So this is not only obnoxious to the people thought that obnoxious to the environment, but life-saving drugs have been isolated from these snakes. For heart surgery, venom isolated from the snakes have been utilized. So this is only snake have the ability to construct their nest. People believe that the snake can be able to construct their nest. It's a bamboo, but not exactly. So here, this is only insect. They can be able to create a nest. They won't construct a nest by means of leaf litter. They can able to incubate for some times. So these are all some tiny snakes. It's an endemic species, of course, to areas like Kalakadu Munduntrai tiger reserves. So this we can speak in some other time. There is a real fact on snake bite, how it can be. Nowadays, it is no time for this. We can skip this slide. There are bird diversity, as I told India, harbor a huge quantity as well as a good percentage of snake diversity. Sorry, birds diversity. Variety of birds can be seen here. This is a unique ecological important species. While I was a kid, we used to kill this kind of birds for a flesh purpose. Okay, so but thereafter only we came to know the significance of these birds. It's ecologically significant. These birds particularly control the insect diversity in the area where actually they are living nearby. So recently, government of Tamil Nadu has announced those who are keeping parakeets. Normally we may say parrot, green color, or Thompson redneck, something. There are some birds. Nobody should keep such kind of birds. Immediately they should release, or don't buy or sell. Like that, government has declared. Now, if you keep green color parrot, in your home, that is offense. Okay, you may be you may be fined for some quantity of amount. Like it is a unique, ecologically unique, as well as an endemic species. Another jungle fowl. Once upon a time, it is very quite common. But those who have invaded for tea estate construction or plantation, those people who have inhabited in the hilly regions, they hunted a huge quantity of this kind of jungle fowl already. They exploited. So the number of individuals can be, double digit or triple digit only, very limited. Of course, this is not endemic to Western Ghats. This is named as a bird of paradise. Bird of paradise. So for knowing the beautifulness of these species, I projected here. These are all the bird species reported as a paradise, birds of paradise. Of course, this is a Chittakulam. Columboides is an endangered species. If you keep like these birds, in your home, that is also offense. We should not keep in our home. It may not be domesticated. This is another hornbill species. It's a gray hornbill. It is also endemic to southern Western Ghats, commonly seen in Anamalai, Kalakada Mundandari, or part of Kodaikanal. We can see this kind of hornbill. It's a great Malabar or Indian hornbill. It is also a wonderful, unique ecosystem. So these indicate the health as well as the age of the trees, of course, age of the forest. So wherever the forest is healthy in the sense that forests have good diversity of plant as well as animal, this kind of birds can be grown. It is also a keystone species. There are some tiny species, they can utilize the forest resources also. They can do some effective role there. These are all some species, flycatchers, jungle myna. When I was in Gandhigram, in 2010 or 11, so quite commonly this myna can be seen throughout the campus. But nowadays, unfortunately, we can't see even individuals. This is a quite common species, but we exploited. This is a weaver species, Tukkananguru in Tamil. So many research have been conducted. The people believe that this is the reason, that is the reason. But of course, we exploited. So by making the nest construction, by constructing the nest, we can able to understand the status of the particular family. See here, the first one, those sparrow is ready to breed, they are as a pair. Here, this indicates the female tried to lay the eggs or started to lay the eggs. So this indicates the incubation period has started. Nobody should disturb this home. So such a way, while projecting, so no other small species, bird or some other reptiles or something can kill the young ones, or mother is in home. So this is a unique characteristic features of this. My friend in Arulagam, that is Bharati Dasan, who is working, working behind the vulnerability of these Indian vultures. Why they have been, moved to endangered category? What are the problems? So accordingly, they found that so the cattle or the animals who are keeping with us, we provided some painkillers, diclofenac or something to the animals. While throwing this cattle in the forest, if they take that kind of flesh, ultimately they may lose their fertility or fertility ability. Such a way, we lost so much quantity of this kind of birds. Of course, nowadays this has been associated with the urban culture. Even this can be seen in cities. House sparrow, so many hypotheses, research inputs have been given. Why it has been moved to endangered category or something. Further, we need to take care of this. But our construction technique, avoided as well as removed this kind of birds from our environment. Of course, scavengers of the forest floor, but may or may not beneficial to the forest regions in the Western Ghats. Unique. These are all some unique animal fauna. Hedgehog. Nowadays, this has been used as a pet animal. So there are so many trading groups are there through which I can quite commonly able to see hedgehog. Only the handful size. That's all. This mulleli, simply known as mulleli hedgehog. Okay, so native to the border between Viluppuram, Pondicherry, and as well as the part of Chennai region. So quite commonly, once upon a time, quite commonly seen there, but nowadays very limited. So wherever you see this kind of organism, we can say the forest is in good conditions. If they are living in a particular forest, we may assume that that forest is in good health. Okay, these are all some individuals. Of course, charismatic species. India spent a huge quantity of money for the conservation of tiger and associated ecosystem by means of tiger reserve, then tiger rehabilitation project, so on. So, however, we need to give special importance to not only the tiger but also its associated ecosystem. This is known as native to India, but there is no living individuals in India. Of course, primates is another one fantastic group. Wide diversity of organisms can be seen. They are not only the predator but also seed sowers. They are propagating the individuals by means of seeds. They are dispersing their seeds from here and there. Ultimately, they help for the forest conservation as well as reclamation. Lion-tailed macaque, of course, lorries, Nilgiri langur. So while looking, these kind of people, need special importance as well as much care. So these are all lower elevated. These primates, are situated in the lower elevated area. Hanuman langur or something other name. So again, Malabar giant squirrel and as well as grizzled giant squirrel. See, they are not only they collect the seeds as well as utilizing the seeds, but also sowing the seed, planting the trees. So during the fertile season or fruiting season, what they will do, they will collect the seeds and make a furrow in forest floor, then kept inside and covered with some leaf litter. Thereafter, they forgotten to trace or they forgotten to collect from where I kept the seeds. So that seeds can get a huge quantity of water. Ultimately, they can develop as a new trees. So such a way, these are all the wonderful forest seed sowers. So this is a unique species. Srivilliputtur giant squirrel sanctuary has established purposefully to protect this squirrel and its associated ecosystem. Sambar deer, of course, no words required to explain for this. Of course, wild dogs, Indian gar. People usually call it as this piece as a bison. In India, we don't have bison. This must be Indian gar. So nowadays, the size as well as the ornamentation as well as the healthiness of these gars have been compared to the different parts of the country. Of course, we can see this kind of gar even Radhanagari. While I was in Radhanagari, Maharashtra, there while looking, so that gar is not in good health because of the inadequate food and some other reason. But if we compare the healthiness of Kodaikanal as well as Nilgiri and some part of southern Western Ghats, their size is almost huge one. Okay, around 5 or 6 ton weight. We can see that. So these are all the basic threads. I don't want to repeat the same things. So through which only we are losing the biodiversity of the Western Ghats. We need to give special importance, or we need to take care on the biodiversity in India, particularly with special emphasis to Western Ghats. So why I must, why I should insist like this, you might have heard about the story about, it's not a story, it's a real fact about the dodo. People already know, if you say, ask, can you example the extinct bird, immediately they can say Archaeopteryx. That's an extinct bird as well as a fossil bird. But nobody, very little people alone knows about the dodo. This is an extinct species. So there is an interesting fact behind this. It is endemic to Mauritius Island. Those people who the Mauritius government has started to create a development plan in their island. For that, they need a tree, wood value tree. There is a Calvaria major. Okay, they send somebody to collect the wood from the forest, but unfortunately, no living individuals of the Calvaria major tree has found in Mauritius Island. So people worked to begin. What is the reason behind this means? Thereafter only the people came to know, because of the absence of the dodo, this rejuvenation of Calvaria major tree has not there in the environment. Why? Because the fruits of the Calvaria major has been swallowed as such by this bird, then it can be ejected through fecal matter. So some chemicals or some enzymes or something has to be trigger the some, or just to create some irritation to the seeds of this kind individuals. Then only the seeds can be able to grow here. Okay, so this is a wonderful fact. Thereafter only they found the association between the Calvaria major as well as these individuals. So these are some few facts. If we found record the vulnerability of the species in the environment, we can categorize into like this. So many species already we lost in the wild. Of course, some species are in the wild. So many species are in a critically or higher risk of extinction, endangered, vulnerability. But the limited people alone need, little bit importance. So these are all some list of species reported in India as well as the world with vulnerability. See here how many number of individuals are under verge of extinctions. So we need to give special importance to them for further. So unfortunately, for our developmental plan, for dam construction or agriculture plantation or money-making plantations ultimately lose our environment and its nature. So of course, road kills. Quite commonly it's happening in the Walayar border in Coimbatore as well as Tamil Nadu. So many elephants have been killed. So that has been declared as the elephant corridor. So those people who are riding the train or something, those people must be, educated to avoid this kind of road rash. Even if you are going somewhere, we must be very cautious while crossing the biodiversity hotspot. So otherwise, illegal tourism as well as a nuisance to the environment as well as the biota may also kill the biodiversity. So these are quite common. If we throw some unwanted material in the forest, ultimately they spoil their behavior as well as the physiological aspect of several biota. So of course, for very limited money making, they are killing wildlife. So this must be prevented as well as a project. Of course, government has keep on developing or producing so much of laws or act or so on, but the common man or the civilian must be aware on the environment and its biodiversity. So like this, there are some countries, they are not at all bothering about the wildlife. See, if we calculate the number of tigers in the world, India have a highest quantity of tiger, about 3,000 to 4,000 tigers have been reported in the wild. If we compare the tiger census India with China, but they have more the tiger under captivity. That is about more than 6,000 to 7,000 tiger individuals have been reported in China, but they are kept under, cages for some economical purpose. Through that, they are developing, not only the tiger, they are also collecting so much of wildlife product. They are making, they are converted into money. So because of that, we are losing our biodiversity. They are not at all bothering about the environment and its biodiversity. Instead, they are spoiling as well as they are making money from the biodiversity. So, of course, illegal trade. We may directly or indirectly support the people as well as the trade. If you do so, definitely that is also another problem to the biodiversity. Pollution. So we can talk for one day, or we can debate, or we can discuss for one day about the pollution in the environment. Unfortunately, it is also taking place in the several lower elevated areas of Western Ghats. Okay, it must be removed or cured. So if it is so, what we can do, sir, means we can go with some conservation perspective. So here we can conserve those species there, in that place we can conserve it by means of institute conservation. If the place is not so good or not so safe for the individuals, means we can remove the species from that particular environment. We can reintroduce somewhere, or we can kept in a safe place through which we can also conserve the species. Of course, so many conservation approaches can be done. Of course, government has also keep on declaring some national park, wildlife sanctuary, conservation reserve, and a community reserve, etc. So, but nothing is happening. But this is for the sake of the diversion of the periphery as well as the reserve, but not much special importance have been given to people. Even government of India as well as the people who are in decision making, you know, they are not at all bothering about the wild as well as other biodiversity. They are looking with you know, sophisticated instruments, computers, technology, so on. But who will give or who will nourish the people who are doing computer research? Who is going to provide a food for the people who are working in the laboratory? So it all based upon the biodiversity of the country. So the primary, and moreover, the people who are there in decision making, they are simply confusing with the term science and technology. They are confusing the term. So science is different. This is the basic research. Because of the basic research carried out in the environment or in the laboratory, the technology has originated. So without science, there is no technology. So this can be projected in elevated level nowadays, but all those people must be fed with the biodiversity alone. So recently, you know, government of India has declared combined the Megamalai wildlife sanctuary and Srivilliputtur wildlife sanctuary, and they joined as a Megamalai wildlife tiger reserve. There is not necessary or required. So this ultimately create a confusion between the people who are there in the forest. Okay, so of course there are so many protected areas in India. See here, of course, more than 500 wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserve, etc. is there. Moreover, there are some international agencies or Indian agencies. They are directly or indirectly providing support by financially or by giving necessary input, documents, data they are sharing with the common civilian, through which we can start to work on conservation of biodiversity. So these are all the important biodiversity organization promote the biodiversity of the world. So we reached at the end of this session. My opinion is we need to avoid exotics. Nowadays, people have a curiosity to plant trees. Of course, good, better to the environment, but please be aware what is you are going to plant it. Which plant you are going to plant in the environment. So for the sake of making a selfie or for the sake of you know, a document or I don't want to mention one college name, they simply planted 100% exotic trees. That is, what is the use? Okay, so we need to avoid the exotic trees. If we plant it here, you know, in the sense, then ultimately it affects not only the environment but also to our future kids. Our future kids may suffer a lot with kind of this nuisance. So we have to conserve. We need to conserve to plant some endemic trees. Moreover, we need to retain some traditional health cultures. So we have to conserve finally trees. Okay, so we must give special importance to trees, or otherwise you can give some. You can support the in situ conservation perspective of government by providing some fund to the wildlife, those who have kept in kept under captivity, zoo or some part of natural reserves. In that you can support. If you are well-versed, if you have money, you know, you can support them to survive. How I did like this mean because of my kids, those who have worked with me, who supported in a lot for in all the ways. Okay, in all the ways, still they are supporting us. They have much knowledge, but I hope their inner soul as well as the blood also have that kind of interest to conserve the biodiversity. So with this, I conclude my lecture. If you have any suggestions, criticism, doubts, or so on, let me know, please. I think I have taken much time.
No, sir, it was on time.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Very extensively, you have covered both flora as well as fauna for all our participants. I think this is a mixed group of botanists as well as zoologists here.
Yes, sir.
So this will be very useful. Sir, why don't you, as being a heterogeneous group, why don't you elaborate that snake genome story which you have skipped for want of time, sir?
Yeah, if it is so, no problem. If it is so, no problem. I am ready.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. See, actually, people believe that, I'll show that. Yes. So these are the 4 important, of course. So in India, around 600 species have been reported. 600 species of snakes have been reported in India. Sorry, in the world. In India alone, we have 235 snake species. In this, only 1/4 of the species alone have a poisonous effect. So don't kill all those snakes. Very few snakes have that kind of killing effort, whereas the other species are nothing but non-poisonous. See, usually people thought that the snakes have sense or remember if somebody did unwanted things to them, they don't have a much sophisticated brain or hypothalamus. They may not remember who are you or the person who killed the in a cinema like cinema, if you kill the so-called wife or husband, they won't have such kind of ability. Moreover, the people thought that the Nalla Pambu and the Sarak Pambu, they can able to mate and they can produce a progeny. Not exactly. In common Indian cobra, both male and females are there. In red snake, that is a Sarak Pambu, in male and females are there. As far as red snake is concerned, they are non-poisonous. Cobra, of course, cobra, then Bangaras, then Cride, then 2 more, These big 4, these are the big 4, have a poisonous effect. Kannadi virian, Katti virian, like that. Okay. So, while if you disturb or if you irritate the snakes, definitely they will try to attack. The God has given a huge quantity of venom here, this fang, back, full of venom, This venom meant to digest the material swollen by the snake. That's all. Okay. So this is not meant to kill somebody who are attacking the snake. So unfortunately, if you irritate or if you do some disturbance to this kind of organisms, what they will do, immediately they will try to bite. But unfortunately, while biting, this fang may open. While inserting this teeth, this fang ultimately open. Then through the opening, the poison will be injected to the human beings. So that is a proteinaceous. Then this can bite with the RBC or WBC. Then it will reach to the human brain. Then ultimately leads to die the person. But unfortunately, we don't know the mechanism behind it. Okay, so we thought that the snakes may lay their eggs, but they won't incubate. They don't have a permanent houses or settlement or some places. They may have a little bit period, 1 or 2 weeks there. Thereafter, it will go from somewhere. They won't permanently stay in some places. Moreover, some people, because of the religious belief, some people may pour a milk inside the pambu puttu. That is that is a termite mite. Termite mite, they are pouring a, milk as well as we are putting some eggs inside, If unfortunately the snakes get inside, ultimately if you do so or continuously, we may kill the snakes. Moreover, people thought that the snake may remember something, not exactly. So the people who are there, in the forest alone, it is the head part, particularly the fang region alone have some poisonous effect. The body may not have any poison material. Of course, we can't eat. So full of contamination, mostly microbial infections may be there, particularly with some bacteria or something. We can't eat as such or by means of boiling. So we must care while cooking these snake materials. Purposefully, there are some people, in case of Viluppuram to Pondicherry, there is a place, Muttukadu. There, Paliyars, there are a group of communities. They are the people permitted to collect venom from the snakes. The person who is collecting the snakes, you are bringing the snake, will be paid by about 50 to 100 rupees. They will keep the snakes in a mud pot for 1 week. They will take 3 tons venom from the snakes. That the snakes will be fed by some rat or frog something. So thereafter, that snake will be released in the forest region, some important marks. So thereafter, they will collect some other snakes. So such a way, the people or government of the Tamil Nadu associated with the forest department, they are collecting that snake venom as a life-saving drug nowadays. This has been used as a life-saving drug. This is this one, this is nothing but snake eating behavior. This snake have snake eating behavior. Ophiophagous. Ophio means snake. Phagus means eating behavior. Ophiophagous Hanna is the name of this king cobra. So these snakes also control the snake diversity in the environment. Otherwise, simply people may call it as snakes are the friends of the farmers. They can control the rat diversity in the agriculture period. Like that, we can speak so many components about this kind of snakes. But in India, we have not much developed to detoxify the venom injected by the snake. But whatever may be the snake bite to the human beings, we used to give only one kind of anti-venomous materials. That is another process. It has been injected to the animal. Then serum of the blood serum has been isolated from the animal. Then thereafter, from which the anti-venomous material has been isolated. That has been injected to the human being who suffered with the snake bite. I think recently you heard about the snake Wawa from Kerala. This person is quite commonly, catching the snakes, but suffered with a lot of snake bites, of course. We may, but once if you have suffered with snake bite, your body system may not stabilize in a proper way. That is my personal experience. I have 2 experiences with the snake bite. So some skin eruptions, irritations may be there. Sir, is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very useful information, sir.
Thank you, sir.
When I worked in this Manjola estate, I have
KMTR. Yes, sir.
green pit viper, sir.
Yes, sir. Quite common, sir.
Viper, yes. Yes, sir. Shall we wait for the questions from audience, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dear participants, the topic is open for discussion. You can raise your hand if you want to interact with the resource person directly, or else you can type the questions in chat box also. We request each and every one of you to fill up the feedback form, which is posted in the chat box. We will also post the profile of the resource person for your future reference as well as to interact with you. Sir, I have some question to ask.
Yes, sir, please, sir.
Sir, regarding this impatiens,
Yes, sir.
is it a highly commercially exploited plant group, or still it is regarded for its wild nature, sir?
But we are not at all utilizing the impatiens diversity for commercial purpose, sir. But actually, the natural calamities like road rash, as well as the urbanization or climatic change, spoils so many species move to the endangered. Particularly, I worked with a few species in Anamudi in the year 2004 to 6. So that time, that species, that is a impatient coelotropis, like that, few more species. But nowadays we can't, are we unable to trace a single individuals in the environment. But it is also interesting to note that those peoples who surveyed, they are keep on flowering for 2 or 3 months only. Continuously they are flowering 3 to 3 months. Thereafter, immediately they will die. Even we unable to trace the exact flowering season of the particular individuals. If you continuously monitor that individual, there will be individuals in the Anamudi regions, but if we unable to trace where it is actually located at which place, why? Because the life period of the impatiens is about 6 months only. So first 3 months vegetative period, next 3 months flowering and fruiting periods. Thereafter, immediately they will die. That is there may be the reason we are unable to trace the individuals in the environment. But moreover, the road extension, these species are orophytic species. Mostly they attach to the rocky mountains as well as the nearby the roadside. There are some barren rocks they will attach there. While expanding the roads, the original diversity of the impatiens may also be exploited. So other than that, nobody is utilizing. Of course, so many commercially important impatiens are there. But in India, we are not utilizing that kind of people for horticulture or commercial purpose.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you, sir.
I think like Orchidaceae group, this single genus itself is of great value
Yes,
for
sir.
both academic as well as research purpose.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What will be your advice for beginners in taxonomy? Somebody is asking in chat box.
Yes, sir. But as I told there are so many drawbacks. Of course, I am also suffering a lot to develop a fund. Of course, so far 1.8 crores have been brought from different funding agency for my research. But no single paisa has been allotted to analyze the diversity of the species or the basic research. So I have some more applied component in my research. While getting the fund for the applied research like a tissue culture or something, so I can also concentrate on this kind of research, basic research. So my opinion is, moreover, if you go for a forest research as a permission, again it's a problematic. So nowadays the people who are administrator of the forest, they are trying to prevent the entry of the researcher inside the forest, but they can allow the common man or common people to enjoy the forest, but we may not be officially permitted to get inside the forest to assess the biodiversity. But there are problems. Okay, there are so many problems there. My request, at least you can concentrate. Those who can able to get inside the forest, you can do. Or those who are surviving nearby in the diversity, you can look on that. Or those who are living in urban areas, you can also take care about the diversity or plant diversity or insect diversity. living nearby. So such a way we can go ahead. My personal request or obligation is those who are doing preliminary research, you can do some field research, or you can advise the people or younger generation or students or research scholars to do some basic research, particularly in the field level. Okay, while doing so, ultimately we can do, or we can conserve, or we can protect the environment. This is not only meant for the diversity as well as the distribution of the distribution of organism in the Western Ghats. It can be applicable to the other part of the country. It can be. Okay. So this is not my, of course, obligation to the younger generation and the other researchers.
Yes, sir. The very reason for organizing this seminar is to create certain ignited minds, certain amount of number of ignited minds among the participants. Definitely, your lecture will be of great use for all of them, those who are interested in biodiversity, especially in fields like taxonomy and molecular phylogeny, etc. And thank you very much, sir. There are no more questions from audience side. Shall we wind up the session, sir?
Sure, sir. I must thank the organizers, head of the department, as well as especially to you who introduced me, as well as the participants who patiently listen my lecture, of course. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Dear participants, we thank each and every one of you for logging in time, for making this event a grand success for day one. We expect the same level of cooperation tomorrow. You can log in from 9:30 onwards. At least we expect you to log in at 9:55 so that we can begin the proceedings in the right time at 10 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow we are going to have two sessions. One is by Professor Lata Rangan from Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, and another resource person, Dr. S. Susai Raj from St. Joseph's College, Trichy. So both of them are going to give different dimensions about taxonomy as well as molecular phylogeny. So we request every one of you to log in time, like what we have done today. We are really thankful for all your active participation, and we expect you to interact more with the resource person so that the program is going to be a dialogue rather than a monologue. Thank you very much. Now we are winding up the meeting. We request every one of you to send feedback form separately for each day. For day one, we have launched the feedback form, which is available in chat box. If it is not available, if you have logged out in between, you can contact us for getting the feedback form. Then you can fill it up at your own leisure. Thank you very much. We are closing down the session for today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. Kannan sir, we can end the meeting, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.